Have you ever noticed the strongest people in the room are usually the quietest? They don't need to prove anything. They don't need to shout to be heard, because silence is not emptiness. Silence is power. And in a noisy world that never stops talking, silence has become your greatest advantage. We live in a world that never sleeps. Social media screams for attention. News cycles repeat drama every hour. Everyone has an opinion, and everyone is shouting to be heard. But here's the truth. Most people don't speak to share wisdom. They speak to fill the silence because they're afraid of it. Think about this. When was the last time you sat in silence? No music, no scrolling, no endless noise. Just you and your thoughts. For many, silence feels uncomfortable. It feels empty. But for the strong, silence feels like power. Because when you're silent, you're not distracted. You're aware. You're in control. Silence is not weakness. Silence is control. When you stay silent, you're not surrendering. You're sharpening. Strong people don't need to argue to prove their point. They let their actions speak louder than their words. Have you ever seen someone walk into a room and without saying a word, everyone feels their presence? That's not luck. That's silence. That's discipline. Because silence creates mystery. Silence creates curiosity. And silence creates respect. When you speak less, people listen more. When you pause before responding, your words carry weight. And when you choose silence over meaningless arguments, you save your energy for battles that actually matter. Silence intimidates people. It makes them uncomfortable. Why? Because silence forces them to face themselves. When you don't react, when you don't rush to fill the space with noise, people start to feel exposed. They begin to wonder, what are you thinking? What do you know? Why aren't you responding? And that mystery is power. Even in conflict, silence is strength. Anyone can yell, argue, or lose control. But it takes real power to stay calm, quiet, and collected. The loudest person in the room is usually the weakest. The one who stays silent often holds a real control. But silence is not just about power over others. It's about power over yourself. When you practice silence, you create space for your mind to breathe. You start to notice things you would normally miss. You gain clarity. Silence teaches patience. It strengthens discipline. It gives you self-control in a world addicted to instant reactions. Think of some of the greatest minds in history, leaders, thinkers, creators. They valued silence. They used it to think deeply, to reflect, to strategize. Albert Einstein once said, "The monotony and solitude of quiet life stimulates the creative mind." Martin Luther King Jr. said, "In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends." Silence is not empty. Silence is full of answers. In relationships, silence speaks volumes. Sometimes silence is love, when words are needed to express how deeply you care. Sometimes silence is respect, when you choose to listen instead of interrupt. And sometimes silence is protection, when you walk away instead of starting a war that doesn't need to be fought. We often think that speaking up always shows strength. But the truth is, knowing when not to speak is a greater power. Silence doesn't mean you don't have an answer. It means you're wise enough to wait for the right moment. Silence is a discipline. It's not easy. It takes strength to stay quiet when your ego wants to argue. It takes power to walk away when your pride wants revenge. It takes wisdom to realize not every battle is worth fighting. Most people waste energy on words that change nothing. They argue on social media, debate with strangers, fight meaningless wars. But the disciplined understand. Silence is strategy. You don't need to prove yourself in every moment. You don't need to respond to every insult, because your silence is your control. When you control your tongue, you control your destiny. Silence is a key to success. Why? Because success requires focus. And focus thrives in silence. In silence, you find your best ideas. In silence, you train your patience. In silence, you learn to trust your vision, even when the world is screaming at you to quit. Warren Buffett once said, "The stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to patient. Silence builds patience. Patience builds wealth. and wealth builds freedom. Silence also makes you unforgettable. People remember the one who speaks with intention, not the one who never stops talking. Your silence will make your words rare. And when your words are rare, they become priceless. So from today, stop fearing silence. Stop wasting energy on noise. Stop trying to win arguments that don't matter. Learn to use the most underrated weapon you have, silence. Because silence is not weakness. Silence is wisdom. Silence is strength. And when you master silence, you master yourself. And when you master yourself, you can master the world. Silence is strength. Are you strong enough to use it?